Okay, welcome everybody to the League of Women Voters second candidate forum for this season. I'm Barbara Califf, co-president of the League of Women Voters of Los Alamos. You can see Lynn Jones, I think, who's going to be our timekeeper, and she will ask the questions. And the person you can't see is Joanne Lisney, who's running our Zoom forum for us. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan. The League does not support any candidate or political party. And unlike in the primaries, tonight we have a variety of political parties represented. This evening, we're going to hear first from the candidates for New Mexico House District 43, and then from the candidates for County Council. For each office, we'll begin with the candidate statements in ballot order. They have 3 minutes each. If you wish to ask a question, you can click on the Q&A box, which is probably at the bottom of your screen, at any time, and you can type in the question. You should indicate if it's for District 43 or for the council candidates. League policy is that all questions must be directed to all of the candidates for an office. The Q&A box is only for questions. It's not a place for comments or discussion. Your cooperation will help Lynn with her task of reading the questions. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. I'll announce when the last question is about to be read. After the answers, the candidates in each group will have a 1 minute for a closing statement in reverse ballot order. So we're beginning with New Mexico House District 43. We have the incumbent, Christine Chandler, and David Hampton, who's running against her. So we'll begin with Christine.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here with my fellow League members and others in the community to discuss how we can continue to move the state forward. Thank you for inviting me. I am completing my first term as your state representative, District 43, and I'm proud of what I've been able to accomplish and what the legislature has achieved in such a short period of time. I expect this to be a lively policy discussion, but I'd like to highlight some of my practical on-the-ground efforts for the community. Many of you in the audience know how hard I work on the policy side of my job, but I also want to underscore that being a state rep involves more than showing up to vote at the roundhouse. A big part of the job is being a champion for the district residents and addressing district needs. Recently, I have been focusing on helping people navigate the state bureaucracy, from helping small businesses better understand how they can operate within the pandemic health orders and helping residents with unemployment claims and driver's license glitches. One achievement I'm really pleased about is the reopening of the Los Alamos Health Office. The previous administration essentially closed the office, and that placed a big strain on many people in Los Alamos, especially kids who need public health support. The first time I met Health Secretary Kunkel on the floor of the House, I brought up the need for a health office here and the county's interest in offering expanded services. Within a few months, we had developed the path forward to the office we have now, including money that I had allocated for facility improvements. I worked with Council Chair Sarah Scott in lab management to press the hospital to bring adequate OBGYN services to Los Alamos. After a lot of pushing and pulling and meetings and phone calls, we now have a full-time OBGYN doctor and the momentum to support a full array of OBGYN services. The Environment Department DOE Oversight Office, which has been located here for years, was under threat of being moved to Santa Fe or Albuquerque. I was on the phone with the Environment Secretary as soon as I heard about it and challenged the rationale for moving the office. I encouraged him to hold public meetings, and as a result, the office is staying in Los Alamos and will continue to do its important work here where the problems are. All of this is a long way of saying that I know the community, I care about the community, and I work hard for the community. When I am reelected, I will continue to be its champion. Thank you, Barbara.
David?
So for those of you who don't know me, I live in White Rock with my wife, Lisa. We've raised 8 kids and have 3 grandchildren. I've been in New Mexico for about 30 years, and I've been in Los Alamos County since 1998. I retired from the lab in 2017. I'm involved in lots of volunteer activities in the county, including the boards of the retirement community, the food co-op, and Parks and Rec. I do volunteer trail maintenance at Bandelier and for the National Forest. And I teach middle school boys Sunday school at Crossroads Bible Church. One of the things I've done in the past is I used to coach track at the middle school, and I started an age group track and field team in town. I'd like to grow and strengthen our community through involvement and building relationships and through respect. I'm running for state rep because I'm concerned about our state government's inability to solve persistent problems. We are last in many good things and first in many bad things. We are last in educational outcomes, second worst in violent crime, first in suicide and alcohol-related death rates, at the bottom end of economic opportunity, and have recently climbed to the 5th highest unemployment rate in the nation, about double that of all our neighbors. Our tax code unfairly burdens small local businesses and favors large out-of-state corporations. We release many violent and repeat offenders from prison shortly after their arrest. We have a costly top-heavy educational system which does not meet the needs of our diverse state. 25% of New Mexicans do not have access to broadband internet. Many of our children leave the state because there's not enough opportunity. These are things that can and should be solved. In addition to solving these persistent problems, I want to preserve our traditional values, including our outlook on life, our self-sufficiency, our personal responsibility, our self-determination, our religious expression, and our right to protect ourselves, our families, and our communities. I support our law enforcement officers and do not support defunding them. At the same time, we need to make sure that all of our citizens are treated equally and have the same opportunity to succeed and the same access to prosperity and equal protection under the law. I'm also concerned about how divisive and uncivil our political dialogue has become. If we disagree on issues or on how to solve them, it doesn't make us enemies. I believe we can respect one another and move forward together to solve our problems together, and I hope you'll support me.
Thank you very much. Okay, the first question will be, David will answer first. Lynn?
How can New Mexico make health care available and affordable for all residents? Do you support the Health Security Act, Medicaid for all, or any other specific proposals?
Making healthcare available to all, especially in the current situation in New Mexico, would be extremely difficult in my opinion. So what I'd like to focus on is reducing the cost of healthcare. And one of the ways I would do that is try and institute comprehensive tort reform, which would put caps on settlements and also would create some sort of vetting system so that frivolous lawsuits are discarded. You have to remember that in New Mexico, we're regarded as one of the more litigious states in the union. So there's a lot of first-rate insurance companies that won't even do business in New Mexico because when someone sues in New Mexico, they will almost always wind up making some sort of payment so they don't have to go to court. So that's something I'd like to deal with. I also want to deal with the situation where when you go in for medical care, it's very difficult to find, it's very difficult to understand what you're going to wind up paying. So I think we need to tackle that. I think that when a healthcare consumer goes in to get medical care, they need to know exactly what they're going to be obligated based on what their insurance covers. And I would like to, and if there's any problems, that should be resolved between the provider and the insurance company.
Lynn, could you repeat the question?
Yes. How can New Mexico make healthcare available and affordable for all residents? Do you support the Health Security Act, Medicaid for all, or any other specific proposals?
To that specific question, I have looked at the Health Security Act legislation, and by and large, I support it. I think there are a number of questions that need to be answered that I have, including how that act will intersect with other sorts of health care providers, for example, Medicare. there is a provision in that law that provides that the option for that plan, the Medicare plan and Medicaid as well, to potentially be part of the Health Security Act system. And I would like to better understand how that would work, because frankly, I'm very concerned about the prospect of taking one system that works and most people are happy with, and subsuming it into a new plan that we really don't, have a good understanding of how it will all play out. There are a lot of variables in such a complex system. So having said that, and recognizing that's going to take time, we have been working on ways to increase, lower the cost of healthcare, increase access through expanding Medicaid for people, lowering prescription healthcare costs, allowing for purchasing of drugs from Canada. That's something that only 5 states have done thus far, and we were one of those states. We enacted a surprise billing law, so people can't be taken advantage of with surprise costs when they are treated. Thank you.
Thanks. Next question, Lynn.
Do you support decriminalizing abortion in New Mexico? Why or why not?
Christine.
It's my turn, yes. Thanks for that question. I think it's an extremely important question, given where we are now and given the president's and Mitch McConnell's interest in pushing through a Supreme Court nominee without a full and complete vetting. I do support decriminalizing abortion, and that's what we're talking about here. A very old law that is unconstitutional at this time, that criminalizes doctors performing abortion in virtually all cases. There is no gestation period, no kind of point of demarcation. It is when at any point in time, unless the care of the health of the woman is at risk and you have to present that issue, remember, to a hospital board, and the procedure has to be done in a hospital. That's what that law provides for. It has an exemption for rape victims, but it's a very strict standard where the rape has to have been reported, etc. So yes, I do support repeal of that law. And in fact, I did vote for repeal of that law in 2019, and I will do so in the upcoming session when I'm quite certain it will be brought forward to us. Thank you.
David?
I don't support decriminalizing abortion. For me, there's 2 questions we need to ask. And those are, is the child alive and is it a human being? And we know from science that the child is a chromosomally unique human being from the point of conception. We also know that it's alive and growing. So in order to defend abortion, in most cases, unless the woman's going to die otherwise, we have to either deny the humanity of the child or deny that it's alive. And science just doesn't support that. So I can't support abortion.
Next question, Lynn.
In light of the state budget shortfall, how do you propose the legislature treat funding for education, including pre-K and teacher salary increases?
David.
So because of the shortfall, there's a number of things we can do. One of which we could raise taxes, another which we could raise permanent funds. And the other thing we could do is cut spending. And I strongly favor cutting spending. So because we increased the state's budget by 21% in the last 2 years, instead of cutting existing services, I would cut back on the 21% increase, which part of it was cut back in the special session, but I would cut it back more in order to make us financially solvent again and not have to raise taxes or raid the permanent funds.
Christine?
I think there are a number of things that we can and should do. One is to look at our tax code. There are a huge number of exemptions, deductions, and things they're called tax deviations and expenditures. There's a ton amount of money that we allow to be for companies and so on that get special tax breaks, and we should be looking there to find ways to raise money. I think that we should consider, again, the land grant permanent fund to help support pre-K and other educational and early childhood programs. What we found out is our budget is volatile, and actually we didn't find that out. We've known that for decades. And although we made great inroads in increasing funding for the schools and other very important programs for the state, we also lacks stability. And so to avoid some of the volatility for the school systems, if we tap into taking a small amount of the income from that fund, not the corpus, the income from that fund to invest in education, I think we'll be able to sustain a much more reliable revenue stream to support our schools.
Thank you. Next question, Lynn.
Redistricting is the responsibility of the legislature in New Mexico. Would you support legislation to make the process subject to open meeting laws and to deny drawing district lines to protect incumbents?
Christine?
Thank you for that question, a very important question, a very timely question. Absolutely. I think we should have complete transparency in government, and I mean that. And whenever I have the opportunity to support legislation that does that, I'm going to do it. And I in fact supported advanced some legislation along those lines last year, I think it was. So yes, definitely, everything should be open to the public to see how the deliberations and are involved and proceeding. And the second part of that question was, would I agree that districts should not be drawn to protect incumbents? Of course, there are standards that should be applied, and they're pretty well established in law, frankly, in terms of how one establishes districts. And it has to do with contiguity and commonality and all these other things. And those are the criteria. There are multiple criteria that have been established by the Supreme Court to help us decide how to district. And of course, we should be following those and not be acting on a political basis.
Thank you. David?
I agree 100% with Representative Chandler. I'm 100% behind openness for meetings, and I do not favor redistricting either to support an incumbent, but also to any kind of redistricting that would support either political party. There has to be a fair way to do it, and I don't know of any other way to do it than to have all the stakeholders sitting down in the same room discussing it. So with that in mind, I mean, bear in mind that right now we have a governor from one party, the Senate is controlled by one party, and the House is controlled by one party. So in order to ensure that we have fair redistricting, we need more balance of power.
Thank you. Lynn, next question.
COVID-19 has made internet access even more important than it was previously. What can the legislature do to make high-speed broadband available to all residents, including rural areas?
David?
So there's several ways we can do this. One of which is we can reform the tax code and no longer put gross receipts tax on infrastructure. So that would help some of the companies that build the infrastructure make it profitable, and that would help many areas in New Mexico. Another way, that's the best way the legislature could help. Another way is to help facilitate discussions between these communities and with, I think it's the United States Department of Agriculture who creates these grants. And I know there's 3 areas in New Mexico. I think it's Penasco, Eastern New Mexico, and maybe Laguna right now. They're taking advantage of these grants. And these are ways we could do it without kicking any money into it. I would also support trying to create regional cooperatives where some of the richer counties could help some of the poor counties, and maybe draw on entities like the National Lab who could help with the infrastructure. And since everybody's working from home now and the lab doesn't have to maintain as much footprint and other things, maybe it's something they could invest in, and that way it would also help with the housing shortage in Los Alamos County.
Christine?
A very complex question that will not be resolved with a tax break. First, we need to consolidate responsibility for ensuring a broadband, that broadband is placed across the state in a coherent way. Right now, responsibility for broadband and internet services is spread out among a number of agencies. Second, we, and within that office, within that office, we should have one entity responsible for all aspects of broadband, including developing a right-of-way policy, which has proven to be a huge impediment for providers who wish to lay broadband. Very important issue. And we also need an expert within that office that will help small communities. These small communities cannot operate within the kind of complex system that we're working within. Go to the federal government. They have to provide 10% matching when they get a USDA loan. That they don't have the money for that kind of thing. They don't have the bonding capacity for that kind of thing. They don't have the technical expertise to be able to implement on those kinds of processes. If we have someone at the state level who can assist in all of those things, we'll be providing support to these smaller communities who just don't have the horsepower really to be able to implement such a program. There are other things I was trying to think of. Oh, good. I'm glad we're done. I have a whole list.
Lynn, next question.
State employees often bear the brunt of a recession. Approximately 2,000 state workers make less than $15 per hour. With a projected budget deficit going into the 2021 legislative session, what will you do to protect state employees who are concerned about layoffs and pay cuts? Do you support a $15 per hour living wage for state employees?
Christine?
It's a very difficult thing. So the governor has imposed a 5% funding cut on all departments, at least at this point in time. And I'm expecting that most of that will be realized through attrition and, deferred spending on one-time kind of spending projects and so on and so forth. So that right now we're planning for the governor's office is showing the fiscal wisdom in terms of trying to exercise fiscal restraint as we go into the next budget cycle and we address some of the budget shortfalls that we're anticipating. So what we need to do is first start cutting in areas of program and one-time spending. And then I think we need to ensure there's a hiring freeze, which the governor has imposed at a certain point in time. I've heard that maybe there's some essential hiring going on in certain areas. And lastly, in terms of what we should be paying our employees, I think we should be paying everyone $15 an hour, with the exception of perhaps restaurant workers, which is a little bit more complex in some of those sorts of occupations. So yes, I don't think it's ethical or moral to pay people for work that cannot support their families.
Thank you. David?
So I think raising minimum wage is probably not the best solution for New Mexico. I'd like to work on creating a more economic prosperity. One of those things we can do is we can reform the tax code to make it easier to do business in New Mexico and attract other businesses here. And other things that would attract the businesses are improving our educational system and reducing our crime rate. I think if we can do that and make New Mexico a place that businesses want to relocate to, we can create that kind of prosperity that will naturally raise wages and give our workers other opportunities.
Thank you. Lynn, next question.
What changes, if any, would you recommend for the tax code? Is it time to rethink the GRT?
David?
Definitely. The New Mexico gross receipts tax unfairly targets small businesses. Small businesses, they don't have all the in-house labor large companies do. So whenever they hire somebody to do something like an accountant or anything, they're going to be paying gross receipts tax on that, putting them at a direct and immediate disadvantage with larger corporations. So I would think that the number one thing we should do with our tax code is to switch from a gross receipts tax to a sales tax on finished products. I know there's lots of other issues that need to be addressed with our tax code, but I'll leave that for after we reform gross receipts tax.
Christine?
I do think we need to relook at our GRT tax system. I noted earlier that there are way too many exemptions and so on and so forth. And what it means with all those exemptions, it places a heavier burden on those individuals and businesses who are not the beneficiaries of those things. So first of all, we have to look at all those things. We need to look at pyramiding, which is, is essentially a double tax down the product chain. We also, but remember, if we do that, we also need to look at our income tax code, which is extraordinarily, is not progressive enough. It places too much burden on lower income people and not enough of a tax burden on higher income people. So, all of these things work together. And what I find really interesting amongst my colleagues, mostly on the other side of the aisle, is they always focus on GRT and how our system varies from Texas, Arizona, Utah. Well, yeah, it does. And Texas, Arizona, and Utah have other kinds of tax systems that recoup that revenue stream for the state. So when you look at our tax system, you have to look at the whole system, not one little piece of it that some group of people have an objection with, because it all works together. We all have to support state services, the state educational program, the state help people with health care, behavioral health. That all costs money, and we all have to come together to find a way to achieve that.
Thank you. Lynn, next question.
Fossil fuel production is a major source of revenue for New Mexico, but it is also leading to climate change. What steps should the legislature take to diversify the economy so that we can reduce our dependency on oil and gas?
Christine?
Well, we've been trying to move in the direction of diversifying the economy, frankly, for decades. And what I continue to say, and I continue to believe, that is we will not be able to attract a diverse array of companies until we have laid the foundation to do so. And that foundation includes ensuring that we have a well-educated and trained workforce, and two, the infrastructure needed to support the businesses who wish to come here. And that's Economic Development 101. Talk to any economic development professional and they'll tell you that's what draws businesses to states. And if you look all around us, like Utah, they have a very robust economy. They also have a highly educated and well-trained workforce, and they also have a pretty well-developed infrastructure. That's why people go to Utah. It's not the tax system. It's because there is the foundation. The foundation has been laid so that companies will be drawn to areas where we can fulfill their needs. And we have not yet gotten there. So I think we need to continue to be working on the educational system and continue to improve our infrastructure, including expanding internet access, high speed, high quality internet access.
Thank you. David?
So education is key to this. In addition to education, we need to do something about our violent crime rate and about improving the tax code so businesses want to relocate here. Bear in mind also on education that Utah is 50th in their spending per pupil. So I just want to throw that out there because it's not always about how much money you put towards education, it's what you do with that money. So in addition to education, once again, I can't harp on this enough, we have to fix the tax code. The gross receipts tax is definitely a buzzkill to people trying to relocate here. And I understand in economics, an economic professor saying that education and infrastructure is the only thing, but it's not. I mean, the companies are looking at the tax code, they're looking at the tax rates, they're looking at a place that's business friendly, they're looking at a place that's not overly regulated. So they're going to look at all three of those things. They're going to look at education and educated workforce. They're also going to look at how taxes operate, and they're going to be looking at the crime rate. They're going to have a hard time getting set up and getting other people they need to move here to come here if there's a high crime rate. So we need to work on all three.
Thank you. Lynn, do we have another question?
Income inequality is especially apparent during this period of coronavirus. How should this inequality be addressed?
David.
So income inequality, I think the best way to address it is to increase prosperity for all New Mexicans. And going back to the last question, it's all about making New Mexico a desirable place to locate a business, so to create more opportunity for people. And it's also about making it easier for our existing small businesses to survive. If we can raise prosperity, we can solve income inequality by creating a greater demand for our resource, our labor resources. And once again, education too. An educated workforce will probably be paid more. And by educated workforce, I'm not talking just about college education. I'd also focus on vocational education. We need to give parents choices so they can, or the kids choices. So some of them might not want to go to college. What if they want to start trades earlier? So why don't we start educating them in the trades earlier and give them a leg up on starting their careers?
Christine?
Wow, that's a really profound, I mean, that's like, can we solve the world? And we can. And so let's look at where we've come from. We know that income inequality has been increasing, not decreasing over time. And we have to ask why that is. Why is it that the billionaires and the millionaires seem to be growing and others are not given the same opportunity at success? And some of it has to do with how the federal government has been operating and ensuring that the very rich are protected and not investing in society to the degree that they are. So part of this is a federal problem. And so let's think about what we can do here on the state level to try to help. And I think really it is working to ensure that everyone has access to the same opportunities, and that starts in the schools. And the school, we know through the Yazzie litigation and other indicators that that's not happening, that students are not given equal access to education. And no, it's not about having the money follow the child through the school system, David, as I'm sure you're just dying to say. It's about investing in our public schools, which we are constitutionally obligated to do, to ensure that the racial inequalities that we know exist in our school system is rectified. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we have time for one more question, Lynn.
What is your position on the 2 constitutional amendments? Please explain.
Christine.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
I support, I think it's Constitutional Amendment 1, which relates to the PRC reorganization. I have a little bit of a quibble with it, and I brought it up in hearings when it was presented to us in House Judiciary. I frankly think it should be a 5-person commission and not a 3-person commission. I think you get a greater diversity of views and viewpoints and expertise when you have a little bit bigger group of people discussing items, but I didn't vote against it just on that basis. So that's where I'm on. I do not support Constitutional Amendment 2. That amendment, I believe, was brought to address the issue that was proved to be problematic in the so-called election tune-up bill that Senator Ivy Soto brought early, I think it was in 2019. And that bill allowed for readjusting districts. And truthfully, I never really understood how it worked. I still don't understand how it worked. I don't think this bill clarifies it. And if you recall, what happened was a bunch of commissioners across the state and county councilors were doing the roll of the dice to figure out whether or not they were going to get another year put on their term or not. Remember that? And I was like, whoa, what happened? We pass a bill and suddenly David Israelovitz gets another year on his county council term. I had no idea how that was happening. And I still don't understand how that bill is going to work. So that's where we are. I voted against it, by the way.
David?
On the First Amendment, I don't support it. I have faith in our electorate to elect qualified people to the PRC. So I would rather have them elected than appointed, regardless of who's governor. And on the Second Amendment, I have no opinion at this time.
Okay, thank you. So time for closing statements. David, you have a minute.
So thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. In summary, my goals are to create economic prosperity and fairness for all New Mexicans and to foster a culture of respect. Respect for one another, respect for our land, respect for our traditions, respect for our rights, and I hope that you'll support me. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Christine?
Well, thanks for having me tonight. I really enjoy these forums. And I frankly much prefer them to when we're live and I can interact, we can all interact with the audience and have a much better kind of give or take. But they're always substantive, which I really appreciate. And so I want to thank the League again for organizing it. And in closing, I just hope that I've impressed on people that I take the work of the legislature very seriously. I work very hard at it, and I always take into account the needs and concerns of my constituents across the district. I'm still learning, and I hope to get better at it, but that really is my goal, and I hope that you all feel that I've achieved that goal and will support me in the upcoming election. Thank you.
Well, thank you both very much. So we're going to, it'll take a little time. We're going to see the county council candidates next. We need them all to turn on their cameras. Okay, well, thank you very much. So here we have our county council candidates. There are going to be 3 seats open and we have 6 candidates. So we're eager to hear what they have to say. We'll go in ballot order to hear the opening statements. So Denise Durkis goes first.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters. My name is Denise Durkis. I'm running for county council because I want to help Los Alamos County plan for growth and embrace the future while preserving the past and the amenities that make Los Alamos County a great place to live. As a 38-year resident of White Rock and a retiree from Los Alamos National Laboratory after 20 years of employment, I have both the desire and the time to study and address the challenges facing the county. I hope to apply my personal experience raising a family in the county and my professional experience as a chief of staff to senior management at the laboratory to serving on the county council. This is my first run for elected public office, but I've been a volunteer member of the county's Community Development Advisory Board since its formation in 2018. Since then, I've also been attending county council meetings, learning about how county government functions and about the issues currently facing the county. My decision-making always will be based on accumulating facts and analyzing options, and importantly, on input from the people of Los Alamos County. I recognize 3 overarching issues facing the county in the immediate future: housing development to accommodate growing population, commercial sustainability to enable small businesses to thrive, and community services to support growth and preserve our quality of life. The 2019 housing study identified the need for more than 1,600 affordable and market rate housing units to accommodate new hires at the laboratory, as well as other occupations in the county, including teachers, nurses, firefighters, officers, police officers, and more. The county should explore all housing options and all possible building sites to address community needs, and importantly, solicit public input on all options under consideration. Commercial sustainability is essential for a thriving community. The county should streamline its permitting processes and consider new zoning options such as mixed-use designations and first-floor office restrictions to enable small businesses to thrive and to support diverse occupations and services necessary for a well-rounded community. To support growth, the county should prepare to upgrade its services, particularly infrastructure, utilities, transportation, recreational facilities, parks, trails, open spaces, and more. These are the issues I've identified, but I welcome input from county residents, the people I hope to represent on the county council, about their specific issues and ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear next from Aaron Walker.
Thank you very much for putting this on. It's a very hard time of the year when we're supposed to be doing all this stuff in person and we have to do it all through Zoom. My name is Aaron Walker and I'm running for county council as an independent. I'm 35 years old and I've moved here with my wife and two little boys, a little over 3 years ago to work at the lab. Prior to the lab, I spent 7.5 years operating and maintaining nuclear power plants on board the USS George H.W. Bush in the United States Navy. I've served on the Community Development Advisory Board since its inception about 2 years ago. And for the past year, I've served as the board's chair, leading the direction of the board and directing how we conduct our meetings. I'm running for county council because we need a mentality shift on the council. We need leaders that are willing to be more open and transparent about the county government. We need leaders that are willing to get involved with all members of the community to find the right answer and not just party allies. If we're going to make progress, discussions must include all residents. We need younger leadership on our county council and more representation for a rapidly growing number of families residing within our county. I bring a very unique and much needed perspective to the table that not many of the other candidates can do. I will not bring any party bias to the table and will address each issue with an open mind. My service in the United States Navy and my time both serving on and as chair of the CDAB have well prepared me for public service, and I look forward to serving all the residents of this county. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Williams.
Hi, so the shop Wi-Fi has been a bit spotty, so hopefully I don't drop out during this, but nonetheless, so I'm Sean Williams. I'm co-owner of Automotive Professionals, and besides that, I also serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission. And before opening this shop or taking over this shop, I did work for the lab. So I'm a computer science PhD. So as a result, on the one hand, I do know what the lab is like. I have experience with the lab, but I also have pretty extensive experience on this side of the bridge, right? And besides just representing a lab perspective, which tends to be the direction that our county council goes, I do really represent the private perspective as well. And since we're in, a really pretty blue collar profession here, I have a great respect for the blue collar workers who make this county run. So, I think that I cut through a lot of the sort of demographics, the socioeconomic demographics of this county. And I definitely look forward to the opportunity to represent these often underrepresented perspectives. And, as I'm sure the Q&A portion of this will really exemplify, my big push in running is to try and make it, more sane, to try and run a business in this county, as right now, it's pretty rough. So, I'll go ahead and advance this show along, but I hope you all have a good evening here. And as others have said, I definitely appreciate the league putting on these forums. I know that the league does a tremendous amount of work to get these things rolling. And, they always do a really nice, or you always do a really nice, really professional job with it. So thank you.
Thank you. James Rickman.
Good evening. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight, and I want to thank all the residents who have tuned in. My name is James Rickman. Los Alamos has been my home for more than 40 years, and I can't think of a better place to live, work, and play. And that's why I'm so enthusiastic about serving once again on the Los Alamos County Council. By way of a little background, as a longtime resident of our community, I've had the privilege and sometimes the frustration of experiencing Los Alamos from a variety of diverse perspectives. I grew up here and attended public schools. I worked in retail, the hospitality and restaurant sectors as a skilled trades worker, a county employee, a newspaper reporter and photographer, and finally at Los Alamos National Laboratory. I retired from the laboratory after a successful 24-year career. Early in my laboratory career, I experienced the community as a member of the missing middle, as somebody who does not qualify for public assistance, but somebody who found the cost of living in Los Alamos to be challenging. My partner and I scrimped and saved and finally bought our first home here at the tender age of 37. This was during one of those recurring boom cycles at the laboratory when housing prices were high and mortgage rates were too. My partner and she and I pondered living elsewhere, but what we liked most about our community are the beautiful open spaces, dark night skies, clean air and water, abundant recreational facilities, family-friendly atmosphere, safety, and small town feel. This combination of attributes really do make Los Alamos unique, and these are what put Los Alamos consistently in top rankings among best places to live. I'm running for Los Alamos County Council because I want to ensure that future generations who choose to make Los Alamos their home can and will enjoy the same outstanding quality of life that we've enjoyed. As far as experience is concerned, I served a 4-year term in Los Alamos County during a pivotal period in our community's history. Our council grappled with the end of an approximate $3 million annual assistance payment that was supposed to cover payment in lieu of taxes for the laboratory. We worked with the Department of Energy and our federal congressional delegation and negotiated with San Ildefonso Pueblo to secure surplus DOE land, much of which is finally being used for needed housing. And we suffered the ravages of the Cerro Grande fire, which took the homes of more than 350 families. As a sole council member who lost everything in the fire, I had the honor of going to Washington to work with the congressional delegation on fire recovery activities and the Cerro Grande Fire Assistance Act. It was a privilege for which I will forever be grateful because the Assistance Act allowed our community to recover to the best extent possible. I believe I can effectively serve as your counselor due to my deep love, understanding, and appreciation for our community. Moreover, I'm ready to hit the ground running. Thank you for taking the time to become informed this evening.
Thank you. Rodney Robertson.
Good evening, League and Los Alamos County. I'm Rodney Robertson, and I live in White Rock. I'm a Democratic candidate for County Council. I have 3 topics that I would like to share with you this evening. My intent is to give you some insight onto how I will serve as your County Council. The 3 topics are competent leadership, shareholder relationships, and a timely path forward. As most of you know, I spent 20 years of my adult life in the United States Marines. It goes without saying, being a competent leader is an essential quality in the Marine Corps. It has absolutely been an important quality as a county council as well. Leadership is instilled in Marines from day one. And if you're fortunate enough to hang around for 20 years, it's fair to say that your leadership abilities played a role. Leadership becomes part of who and what you are. Competent leadership is the abilities to follow me into civilian life and continue to serve me today. And I will bring that to County Council. Stakeholder relationships. I would like to approach issues from the standpoint of inclusion. Everyone is heard, and no one, especially the citizens we serve, feels alienated from the decisions that affect them. Respect for and recognition of each stakeholder relationship is something I would like to bring to County Council. A timely path forward. Here again, it seems to me that it takes an extremely amount of time to complete projects and tasks. If elected, I hope my leadership abilities and desire to enhance stakeholder relationships will allow us to reach a timely path forward on the issues that come before the council. Let me talk about some of those issues. Those being downtown revitalization, housing, local hospital services, quality of life, and some of the codes that are currently used. A timely path forward is something I would like to bring to the council. My name is Rodney Robertson, candidate, County Council. Thank you.
Thank you. David Rager.
I came here 34 years ago and then spent 32 years as a researcher at the laboratory. The community has been a wonderful place to live and raise children. Here we have a community full of parks and surrounded by recreational lands or lands that are mostly open for recreation. And like many retirees, I found it such a pleasant community that I did not want to move anywhere else. Now it is time for me to try to give back to the community through service to the county council. One of the reasons this is a good place to live is the history of conservative management by previous county councils. Part of that history is keeping resources focused on substantive issues that really improve the quality of life. An example of this is the effort years ago to build a hydroelectric plant on the Chama River, and this has provided decades of electricity to the community. Los Alamos has recently entered into a carbon-free energy plan. I support the modular reactor part of the plan, but you really can't use renewable energy for the bulk of your generation. It can't be for your central power generation. We instead pay homeowners for their solar or wind if they generate it, but we do not can't use that as a central generation where we really have to, the county has to have power sources that you turn on and off when you need them. In any small city, it's hard to maintain the businesses that provide services to the community. These services are healthcare, restaurants, etc., and they're all vital to the quality of life, and the county government needs to be an ally that promotes their success. From a real estate point of view, Los Alamos is essentially an island, and this leads to a tight market for all the local businesses. The county government cannot be an additional barrier to their success. They have to be a very active ally. There are three areas we can act in order to improve the quality of life. The first thing above all is that the county, both the council and the staff, should view the support of local businesses, both current ones and new initiatives, as their primary goal. This is how you contribute to the quality of life in the council. This is how you provide for our future residents. And we have to take that as one thing that cuts above all of the other functions of the council. In addition, we want to have low-cost, reliable utilities. Low carbon content is not a valuable goal for our community. Instead, we have many low-income people, and they need to have the lowest cost utilities provided to them possible. That's the best thing you can do for people that are on struggling with lower income jobs. And the last thing is that we have a small population center, and many communities this size are struggling with their healthcare. And we have to take in mind this may require capital money or other kinds of partnerships in order to secure this in the future. Thank you very much.
Interesting. So now it's time for questions. Lynn will read the questions and then I'll call on each of you in turn. You each have 1.5 minutes for your response. Lynn, the first question.
How should we address the demand for more housing in the county? Should low-income housing have priority? Is it okay to take away open recreational space if it creates more housing?
Sean?
Yeah, so I do think that low-income housing, I mean, it has been and it deserves to be a priority. And, you know, there is a pretty precise definition for that, and a lot of federal programs and federal dollars get tied up in it. You know, in terms of the question about, you know, the open space and those sorts of things, I think we have a lot of options that we should be running through before we open that particular box. You know, part of what's kind of tricky about the question is you know, our demand for housing really does come from the federal budget. It's largely outside of our control. So, you know, we have the sort of pragmatic question, you know, should the lab cut its budget? I mean, we're powerless to make it do that anyway. But if it continues to go up, you know, are we just going to expect people to live off the hill? You know, that said, you know, we need to look at redevelopment, you know, at the former DOE sites that we have available to us first. In terms of whether I would support mowing down trees, taking away trails, no. But there is these 20 acres on DP Road that are pretty virgin and definitely a big question. So I know that's not a very satisfactory answer, but nonetheless, that's where we are.
Thank you. James?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please? I had to unmute.
Yes. How should we address the demand for more housing in the county? Should low-income housing have priority? Is it okay to take away open recreational space if it creates more housing?
Thank you. I actually think the highest priority housing that we need here in Los Alamos is this housing for what people are calling the missing middle. These were people who I found myself in the same circumstance where public housing was, I didn't qualify for any sort of public housing or housing assistance, but I actually was too poor to sort of get into the housing market here. The problem with not facilitating people to get into the housing market is then they can't participate in the economy and fully participate in the economy because most of their money is going towards housing. Some of the things that we can do in terms of missing middle housing is we have these DOE land transfer properties. One that I as a perfect candidate for that is the former DOE LASSO headquarters. We could build very high density apartment type spaces for single people or small families where they could save enough money to graduate up to better housing. The other thing that we could do is I really believe that we need to redevelop blighted areas and underutilized housing areas. And we can also use the code, the development code, to facilitate in-law type houses in larger lots or higher density housing in existing areas.
Thank you. Rodney? You're muted, Rodney.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yes, I agree with a couple of answers previously. I certainly agree with the existing blight in some locations, specifically White Rock, as far as getting some of those housing units available or inhabited. At the same token, land transfer is also an option. I also support the prioritization of low-income housing, as well as some of the open space. However, I do feel that using some of the recreational areas is not an option or a last resort. We do not want to use some of those areas to place housing initially. After looking at some of the options or some of the additional options, as I said, that would be certainly a very last resort as an option for me. Thank you.
Thanks. David?
Yes. Well, one of the things that's missing here in White Rock very definitely is senior housing. We have one small facility on Longview that's called the Beehive, and it's only for assisted living. In the rest of the area, we don't have a place for seniors to go when they want to downsize. And this then creates a backlog or a bottleneck in the housing market for young families who can't find a house to live in. So we have tremendous opportunity to rebuild by infilling. And the same thing is in Los Alamos, although I don't think perhaps they might not need senior housing, but still apartment type housing, infilling into some of the areas in the county that are underdeveloped or even closed buildings or buildings that are in pretty much a decrepit state that need to go. And that is something that the county council should push for very aggressively. They insist that this land be put to public use, the redevelopment. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise?
So the 2019 county housing study identified the need for more than 1,600 housing units, particularly for low and middle income housing. to accommodate new hires at the laboratory, as well as other occupations in the county. The county should explore all housing options and all possible building sites to enable moderate growth. This does not mean that the county should develop all the potential building sites identified in the study. The county must preserve our open spaces and our recreational areas, and in developing additional housing. Partnering with the public schools to develop the North Mesa property with low density housing is one possible solution. Mixed use zoning and higher densities in the downtown areas are other possible solutions. So the county must use a balanced approach to developing new housing areas while preserving the areas that contribute to the quality of life that we value. Thank you.
Aaron?
All right, thank you. I think I'm going to tackle this backwards. Preserving our open spaces is extremely important. We have to solve this by building up and through redevelopment. Our downtown clearly needs to be redeveloped. That's a perfect area for us to put condos on top of retail. Affordable housing should absolutely 100% take priority. And I don't mean affordable for Los Alamos. I mean truly affordable housing. We need to utilize inclusionary zoning so that we have truly affordable housing throughout the entire county. And because we need to bring in people from all walks of life here, because right now a lot of our businesses are hurting because they can't hire people because there's not many people to hire. So not only do we have to make truly affordable housing for the sake of having housing, we need to have truly affordable housing to help our local economy as well. And everybody else has already touched on everything else, is building higher, mixed use, and zoning. And we absolutely need to pursue land transfers from DOE. We need to work on that extremely hard to try and increase the overall footprint of the county so that we can get more houses in without encroaching onto our open spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, next question.
This year, county staff recommended that the contract held by Family Strengths Network be given to a different organization. Many in the community wanted Family Strengths Network to continue to serve Los Alamos residents. Council disagreed amongst themselves as to whether they should support what county staff was recommending versus what the community requested. What would you have done if you were on the council?
Rodney?
Yes, this is one of those areas that I still working at, looking at, but I would certainly support the certainly could support the wishes of the county and the community on that. That's all I have on. That's my answer for that. Thanks.
David?
Yeah, the Family Strengths Network is so popular in town. It has a universal acclaim. And how the county council ended up and the county government ended up dropping their contract is really beyond me. I don't see any really good reason for it. Not only they're very effective and really well liked, but they're also inexpensive because most of the people there are volunteers. They hire and coordinate with professional counselors and things like that, and they pass all those services on to the county at a very reasonable cost. So I have no understanding of how that happened, and it's the perfect kind of thing for the county council to be aggressive, representing the interests of the public. And this is one of my main points in my literature they pass around. We are supposed to be public representatives. We're not part of the county government and serving the county people that just want to do other things. We are supposed to serve the people of the county, and we very aggressively take up what they need done. And sometimes that would involve pushing very hard at the county government. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks. So, yeah, and first and foremost, I absolutely support the Family Strengths Network, particularly just from the practical side that the competitor Las Cumbres has additional sources of funding, whereas FSN does not. FSN relies upon our funding, and without it, they probably will die, and we shouldn't allow that. So to me, in terms of this question, the most interesting thing about it is our county has a June fiscal year. So that was why this came up when it did, sort of, and the contract expired at the end of June. The interesting question to me is, those RFPs go out at the beginning of the year, like last November probably. So why didn't council actually see the contract until the middle of June? So, even beyond just that, council is, I think, on the right path of reissuing the RFP. I think the more important thing is to audit the community services division and find out exactly how this contract got so badly delayed in its presentation to council, as it was because of this extensive delay that there was the controversy, right? That council kind of hit the wall on the time it takes to do an RFP reissue. So I think that's the bigger question, right? What is wrong in CSD that allowed us to even be in this situation?
Thank you. Aaron?
Oh, thank you so much for answering this question. I was hoping this topic was going to come up because my wife and I have actually been frequent users of Family Strengths Network. This issue was a huge debacle. There were over 70 letters of support for Family Strengths Network read at that council meeting. For any counselor to ignore that would have just been a complete disaster, in my opinion. The fact that there was people willing to throw out all of those letters of support for Family Strengths Network just scares me. The fact that elected officials that are here to represent the people are just ignoring the will of the people. Family Strengths Network is established in this community already. They have a very good, very awesome network of services that they provide already here. To eliminate that and to shift providers and to shift the way that the services are provided would have just been a complete disaster. Sean already touched on this, but we need to fix the RFP process. This and a couple other RFPs that have been issued recently give clear evidence that the RFP process is broken and needs to be looked at severely, because there is no way that this RFP should have made it to council. It shouldn't have taken as long as it did, and it shouldn't have made it to council in the manner that it did. Thank you.
Thanks. James?
Yeah, without relitigating the entire topic again, I would have gone with Family Strengths Network. The service that they've provided over the years has been invaluable to this community. I know lots of people who have availed themselves to those services. I know actually people who are part of Family Strengths Network, and to echo a previous sentiment, how that contract just up and disappeared is beyond me. Now, one more point that I want to make. I'm a firm believer that the county council sets policy, not the county staff. And over the years, that philosophy seems to have changed a little bit. And one of the things that I see among the council currently is sometimes trying to pass the buck off to county staff when things don't go right. Bottom line is, as a county councilor, the buck stops with you because you're the ones that set policy. You're the ones that make the final decision. If you don't have the strength or the intestinal fortitude to make some of the hard decisions, then you ought to not be on there. I have no trouble making hard decisions sometimes. I have no trouble supporting local interests and the people who are constituents, even if sometimes their wishes contradict with what I might think is the right idea.
Thank you. Denise?
The Family Strengths Network and the Los Alamos Learning Center each provide unique services that fill particular niches in the county's community services. I would like to see a way for the county to be able to support both, even if it means issuing another RFP. As for Family Strengths Network, I wish their services had been available when I moved here with 3 preschool boys many years ago. I think that for this particular RFP, the council should have supported the Family Strengths Network. And I believe that they are currently providing interim funding until the matter is resolved. But as I said, I'd like to see the county find a way to be able to support both. And I agree that the council and the county should revisit its procurement process with respect to RFPs. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, next question. You're muted, by the way.
A new fiber internet connection will soon be made available to the county in cooperation with Lanol. What can the county do to promote access to high-speed broadband internet for all residents of the county?
David.
Well, I assume it's me. The most important useful technology for doing this is called WiMAX, and so you can use kind of like a Wi-Fi that goes over ranges of several miles, but the antennas don't have to be very tall, just slightly taller than a house. So you can do wireless along the lines of what one of the companies in town is already doing, but you put up a tower and allow just rent space on the tower and allow competing private industry to spread Wi-Fi, well, it's really WiMAX, but spread internet coverage over the whole community. This stuff is very inexpensive. And what you have at the other end is a WiMAX receiver, but then you do Wi-Fi to the local houses. And you can make arrangements with every homeowner to find that on top of the house. Now, there is a company in town already doing something like this, but I think what you should make available to them is a better tower service, and then just let the private industry provide that to everyone.
Denise.
So community broadband is essential for this day and age. Our workers are working from home. Our children are learning at home. And the county must find a way to make broadband available to everyone. The county the laboratory, I understand, has broadened its services, and there might be a way for the county to piggyback on the laboratory's infrastructure. For sure, the county must support infrastructure development, such as towers, so that broadband can reach everyone in the county. And if necessary, perhaps the county should consider treating community broadband as another utility. That would require an amendment to our county charter. But I don't think that should be off the table because I think this is a critical utility or service that is needed in this day and age. Thank you.
Thanks. Rodney?
Yes, I'm thinking on the same train of thought as Denise, referencing whether it's a utility or a service. Once that decision is made, of course, broadband is an essential service. Here again, prior to COVID, it was very important, and it's certainly important now. That said, it should be one of those services, whether it's a utility or falls under the utility lane, or whether it's a service that's provided outside of the utility industry. It's something that Los Alamos County needs desperately. Thank you.
Aaron?
So there's two things I'd like to see the county do. First is to make broadband a public utility so that it can provide reliable internet to everyone in the county. The county can afford and is able to take care of the infrastructure installation requirements on a much better scale than other companies or other small businesses in the area, because there is a small business in the area that does provide internet access. So we need to absolutely get on community broadband. The other thing that we need to do is also we need to make sure that the local business that is in town providing internet does not go out of business. We don't want to come in and just completely undercut a small business and put them out of business. We need to make sure that every single person in the community has an option for broadband, but that they don't necessarily have to go through the county or through a specific provider. Thank you.
Sean?
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like Aaron may have taken the wind out of my sails there. Yeah, I mean, my main concern with the county getting into WiMAX, which I actually had to quickly look it up because it's been a long time since grad school. It is apparently different from Wi-Fi. You know, so I wouldn't want to see the county drive LANet out of business. You know, there is a good possibility for public-private partnership on this, right? That, you know, if the county has a trunk line coming in, that might be a good option for LANet to do their, you know, their connection into, you know, the ISPs for the ISPs, the tier 2, they call them. You know, I do support community broadband or broadband as a utility, but since we already have a local provider on the 802.16, the WiMAX, and I would much rather see the county supporting them with newer internet service, and then looking at, you know, potentially actually trenching in and laying fiber out into the neighborhoods as a long-term, you know, highly stable solution. And as I've mentioned before, although it was only in a democratic form, you know, when it comes to LANet, I would like to investigate the possibility of the county aiding with the legal side of easements for placing their little antennas around town, since after all, the county owns quite a number of power poles. Thanks.
Thank you. James?
Yes, community broadband is definitely a necessary part of the fabric of our community. And it's interesting that it comes up again and we have another opportunity to go for this. And I don't think we should squander this one. Back when I was on council, the very tail end of that, we had done a community broadband study. At that time, the county could have gotten into the broadband system, and it was still unsure whether we wanted to do it as a utility or public-private partnership or whatever. But that was about $4 million was the cost at that time, which this was before we had Lanol gross receipts tax. And so that was about a third of our entire budget, our gross receipts revenue budget. So of course we could sort of kick that can down the road. A few years later, the topic came up and the price tag had gone up to about 10 million. Bounce ahead a few more years and a few more councils, the topic comes up again, and I believe that price tag was 40 million at that time to implement it. The fact that we have an opportunity now again leads me to believe that we should probably go for it this time. We have much better financial shape than we were back in those days, and it's important for the community and the future of the community. I don't know whether we operate it as a utility or public-private partnership, or maybe a little of both. I don't know, but we need to look into that.
Thank you. Next question, Lynn.
Yes, there's one question that the audience would probably all like to know, and that just is a single answer. The question is, who are the 3 county councilors whose terms end and will be replaced by 3 of these 6 candidates? Could somebody answer that question just once?
Here, I'll go ahead and take it. It's Katrina Martin, Antonio Majori, and Pete Sheehy.
Thank you. Okay, next question. What have you already done, or what do you plan to do to advance racial equity in our community? And how will you represent the interests of the most disenfranchised groups in our community?
Aaron?
So I think that starts, that goes back to affordable housing. We need to make sure that we have an equitable place for everyone to live and not just the super rich. We have to make sure that our police chief, first of all, has done a wonderful job in reaching out with the recent protesters and dealing with that. And I want to commend him for that. We need to continue down that path. We need to make sure that we are continuing to have these discussions on race and continuing to do everything that we can to push forward for racial equity in our community. We have to continue to have sort of racial equity trainings. We have to make sure that we are doing the best that we can to make this county equal for every single person that wishes to live here, regardless of race, color, sex, creed, gender, any of that. No matter what, this place needs to be a community that is welcoming to absolutely everyone. Thank you.
Rodney. You're muted, Rodney.
I can certainly echo everything that Aaron mentioned, as well as, in addition to that, is equitable housing and fair wages, and just to kind of continue some of the projects that the current council has put into place as of a couple of sessions ago, as far as some of the proclamations that were made to put into place racial equity programs and whatnot. Thank you.
James?
I think as community leaders, we need to lead by example. Our community has to have zero tolerance for any sort of hate or racial inequality or whatever. And so that starts with us, and that just needs to be the tenor of the town. And I'm glad it was nice to actually see some of the young people this summer after George Floyd and that type of thing, going out and expressing their points of view. I think that stuff is healthy and natural, and I'm happy so far to see that in this community we haven't really had hate crimes and that kind of thing, and I hope that continues.
Denise?
So the county should and has recognized racial inequity as a problem. The county should investigate look at its own staffing, its own services, to see areas that need to be improved in both in county government as well as the police force, the fire department, and so on. I think awareness training is essential for county employees. We make assumptions that we are not racially biased, but we often are not aware of the things we do and say that can be misconstrued or offensive to others. I equate this with sexual harassment awareness training that all supervisors at the laboratory had to take many, many years ago. So I think the training is an essential part of this. And I do think that the county should continue its initial efforts to examine itself and address whatever issues are identified and be proactive in its path forward. Thank you.
Thanks. David?
Yes, well, any such discussion, I don't accept that our police department has any evidence of unprofessional or racially biased behavior in their entire history of the department. I would like someone to come up with an example of when that's wrong. So I can't accept anything that is really critical of the department in the area of claiming that they're systematically abusive of any group. I've never seen it. The only complaint I have are tickets that are 7 over in a 25 zone, which is my personal complaint. I don't know if anyone else has it. But in general, our department is extremely professional, and I've never seen any evidence in their entire history that there's something they need to be upbraided for or criticized for in the history of the department. With all that in mind, I think the best path forward in terms of is to always express, the same kind of tolerance for each other that has been the accepted standard of this nation since Abraham Lincoln. And we should continue to follow that principle. Thank you.
Thanks. Sean?
Thank you. So I guess I'm going to go in a bit of a different direction with this question. So when I think about racial justice issues in this community, my mind immediately goes to the surrounding communities, right, to the Valley, to the Pueblos. That when you think like, well, who's going to be, really hassled by the cops, right? My best guess would be it's going to be the kid from Espanola. So what I would like to see as the sort of substantive push on this is spreading the wealth into our surrounding communities, right? Lifting them up so that, we don't have, or so that we can at least help try and diminish the negative stereotypes that a lot of people on the Hill have for the Valley. So I know that the RCLC is a very controversial thing at this point, and maybe it'll rise like the Phoenix, or maybe it'll just sort of crash and burn. I'm not really sure, but at least setting RCLC aside, I think that one of the things that at least the county government can do for the surrounding communities is to revise the procurement code to not just focus our spending on this community, but also on the surrounding communities, right? Try and bring some of the wealth down into the Valley.
Thank you. Lynn, next question.
How should the county respond to Lanol's request to expand if their demands conflict with our citizen-developed comprehensive plan and lead to loss of recreational open space, worse traffic congestion, higher rents for local businesses, and other quality of life reductions?
James?
That's an excellent question. I'm glad that somebody finally asked that. Look, we have to recognize that Lanol is is the engine of a regional economy. You can't make the assumption that everybody who wants or who works at Los Alamos National Laboratory necessarily wants to live in Los Alamos. People make choices. That's the way it's been for decades. The laboratory budget ebbs and flows famously over the past years, and so we find ourselves in periods like we are now, where it's rapidly expanding and there's a lack of housing. And then not too long ago, we were all wringing our hands because there were so many vacant houses in this community, and that was when laboratory funding was at a lower point. So right now we're on a huge trajectory. The laboratory is on a huge trajectory up to $3 billion, which is unprecedented. We're coming out on the other side of COVID. We might have a change in national leadership. Who knows what the budget's gonna say? So my strong feeling has always been, and this is one of the reasons why I'm running for council, we need to focus on the residents who live here now. We need to provide the best quality of life, best service for the 18,000 residents who call Los Alamos their home now, instead of focusing on potential residents who may or may not even come here. And so we need to help the laboratory to the extent possible, but retain our independence from it.
Thank you. Aaron?
So I think we need to kind of stand up against the lab in some aspects of that. I think that if the lab wishes to expand, we need to pressure them for more land transfers much more rapidly so that we can try and at least keep up with demand. If we don't, then we're just going to lose ground, and there's going to be more of a housing crisis. And like you said, more traffic, more congestion, more of everything that's just going to make it harder and harder to live up here. If we don't pursue those land transfers in conjunction with the lab trying to expand, it's just going to make the situation 10 times worse. We have to add a caveat to the lab wanting to expand, and we have to stand up for ourselves as a community and basically say, no, we're not gonna do this because it's going to make a way of life here impossible. I think that if we don't do that, we can't continue to sustain an economy and a community up here. Otherwise, it's just going to turn into the entire lab is taking up all of the mesas up here, and that's it. Thank you.
Denise?
So we should grow responsibly, not just randomly to respond to expansion at the laboratory. I think the county should embrace the future and support moderate growth, but while preserving its past and the amenities that make this county a wonderful place to live. If we should be successful in getting land transfers in the future, that would allow the county to grow further. But if and until that happens, we have to deal with the landlocked space that we have, and concentrate growth in our downtown areas, but preserve low densities in residential areas. In doing all of this, the county absolutely must have ongoing input from the public as to what and how it wants to grow. Thank you.
Sean?
Yeah, so I guess this discussion has diverged a bit, right? The lab budget absolutely does ebb and flow, and it's only a matter of time until Triad wears out their honeymoon with Congress, and then we might very well have this housing crisis fix itself. At the same time, I do disagree with the notion that, or with, I guess, an excuse maybe, that not everybody wants to live up here. The meteoric rise in housing prices definitely says a lot of people do want to live up here. So getting to the meat of the question, I occasionally tell people, if you come to the negotiating table with nothing, then that's exactly what you'll get. And in order to sort of make headway with the lab, we do need to figure out, and I'm just going to be super pragmatic about this, we need to figure out what leverage we have over the lab. The office space situation is definitely one of them. I haven't honestly brainstormed enough about other ways that we can effectively push back against the lab. But I think if we want our voice to be heard at the lab, we need to make them listen to us. And that's a big question. And it's a question that I guess I'm definitely going to continue, thinking about and investigating as we go forward.
Rodney?
Yes, my first position is I support standing with the citizens. I also think Lanol has sufficient amount of land inside the fence line to help their expansion. Here again, this should be a partnership between Lanol and the county. It should be a fair partnership, not a lopsided partnership where Lanol, because this Lanol gets to make the rules for the county and the citizens of the county. We certainly should push back where pushback is needed and compromise where needed, but we should not go down without the fight. It's just that simple. Here again, we are looking for a partnership with Lanol, not Lanol being the dictator and directing us as a county what we should or should not be doing, especially as it impacts our economy, as it impacts the citizenry, as it impacts the day-to-day lives of citizens of Los Alamos. Thank you.
Thanks. David?
Yes, can you repeat the question now? What was the question exactly?
How should the county respond to Lanol's request to expand if their demands conflict with our citizen-developed comprehensive plan and lead to loss of recreational open space, worse traffic congestion, higher rents for local businesses, and other quality of life reductions?
No, thank you. Yeah, we have to be very sober about this because I'm not sure when you look at the federal deficit, how long our laboratory is going to have this sort of plush life with the federal government. So there, at some point, something has to come to a head in Washington. Now, I don't know when that'll ever be, but there has to be some limit at some point in time. So taking that as a starting point, the lab really doesn't control where our budget's going to end up, and they can't control the level of final employment. In addition, we've had the thing before where the whole county had to evacuate through a couple of narrow roads. Thankfully, they didn't evacuate the same day, but then when White Rock evacuated, there was 10-hour traffic jam of people getting on one little 2-lane road. So we clearly are given additional growth in the community, we have to require additional transportation. And whether the DOE wants to put in highways or maybe a train even, I don't know what they want to do. But we need something like that as a prerequisite for having any substantial expansion in our town, because we can just be left with in a very difficult position. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Lynn, next question.
How will you help the council work as a team, even if you disagree with a decision? Please give an example of how you resolve conflict.
Denise.
So working collaboratively is essential to get things done, particularly on the county council. I believe the important way to build consensus is to do research, develop facts and present those facts to your fellow counselors so that you can convince them to vote a certain way. Or this could work the other way around. They would do the same, to approach me. But teamwork on the council, I think, is essential. There will always be dissension, and diverse ideas are important. But at some point, the council does have to reach consensus and come to an agreement and vote on the issue. In my work at the laboratory, I've been, I had a lot of experience working with people in different organizations to implement new directives from above. And the best way to do that, as I have said, was always to present people the facts, to listen to what others have to say, and then build consensus and move forward. And that has always proven the best way to work for me.
Thank you. Sean?
I mean, fundamentally, disagreement on council is resolved in according to Robert's Rules of Orders, right? You make a motion and you discuss it and then you vote, and the vote decides it, right? This is exactly the reason that Robert decided he needed to formalize parliamentary procedure. But I know that's not exactly what you're getting at here. So, personally, I am quite good at taking on other perspectives, and even though I may not necessarily think that there's a lot to certain perspectives, that certainly helps me hash things out with people and often at least understand where they're coming from. You said give an example. I can't exactly give an example, right? Jordan and I are faced with tremendous decisions constantly, and he and I just discuss them and agree pretty quickly. So then it's always a tricky question to ask, because people tend to surround themselves with others who they're broadly on the same page with. So in terms of council, I'm a pretty fierce debater, and otherwise, the vote's the vote.
Thank you. David?
Well, I've always worked on some teams, so I'm not too worried about that. And on some major issues, I think there already is a general consensus. Everybody knows that we need more housing, and that we're going to go down, and that the best thing is to preserve our big expanses of recreational land, and to try to do that through some kind of an infill process in existing land. So I think everybody's on the same page with that. And in terms of, but I think you're asking probably a deeper question about what is the process of reaching agreement in such a complex structure. And there's some places where we just won't be able to agree, but that's just resolved through votes. And so in the future, there's you have to accept that there are votes that every side will lose. And that's just part of trying to get along with people. And in the future, you try to advance a better argument. So in general, the county council has had a couple of really difficult decisions lately that I strenuously disagree with, and I would not be able to be very quiet about. And one of them, the FSN decision. Then there's all of the mess with Uncorked and development in the town. And then there's the whole issue of sort of going along with this strange lockdown behavior that is devastating to our local businesses and really doesn't have a medical justification. It just is a strange thing to do. And we should really be worried about the well-being of our people. And part of that is employment. and the things that come from poverty and the loss of life from poverty that is a bigger effect than the disease. But thank you.
Thanks. Rodney?
Yes, for me, this would be a focus on building consensus, collaboration, relationship building, as well as stakeholder relationships, and of course, team building. All of those things combined, and throwing of course, the facts into the equation will allow me to arrive at a position on a given subject. Of course, we're not going to always agree on every subject. Me as a emergency management professional, I've had opportunity to sit on different committees and boards, including my fellow firefighters, my fellow law enforcement officers and whatnot, on certain topics that were up for discussion as it related to emergency management, of course. And of course, we had to make a decision one way or the other on a path forward on those. So I have experience doing that in that capacity. But in my opinion, at the end of the day, we want to default to what's in the best interest of the citizens of Los Alamos County. And that would be my driving force. And that's my position on that one. Thank you.
James?
Yes, this question sort of goes to the art of politics, and I'm actually glad that people asked it. The first thing that people need to recognize is that everybody who's running for council has a strong desire to serve the public and do the best in the best interest of the community, and we all need to recognize that. The council that I was on, we were actually an extremely diverse group of people. We really didn't see, there was some homogeneity to it, but we used to argue quite a bit on a number of different issues. We had a lot of 4-3 votes. We had a lot of 5-2 votes. We had a lot of 3-4 votes. We had a lot of votes where everybody kind of thought they knew what was going to happen when they walked in there, and it was a complete surprise. To me, having a highly diverse group of people, we actually, and debating the issues, we actually ended up with much better decisions than I thought we would have had going in. And so I think there's actually a real strength in having a diversity of thoughts and ideas on the council. Studies have shown time and time again that some of the worst decisions in the world come from bodies that engage in groupthink. So you need to have that. On the other hand, sometimes you have people who they just want to vote against whatever as a protest vote or whatever. That's all well and good, but it doesn't actually serve anything. In the art of politics, you don't get anything done on the council unless you get 3 other votes to side with you. And that's what you have to learn to do. And you have to work on those things and solving those types of problems.
Thank you. Aaron?
So it starts with honesty and transparency. In the past 2 years of being on CDAB, I think Denise and I have disagreed on just about everything there is to disagree on when it comes to code enforcement. To get around that, what we have to do is we have to acknowledge the other person's opinion and realize that their opinion, while you may not agree with it, is valid, and we have to find some sort of consensus in that difference. We disagreed all the time, and that's okay, and there is nothing wrong with that. It got to the point where I was willing to nominate Denise to be the vice chair for the board in order to give a diverse opinion some more leeway on the board, to give them some more responsibility. You have to be able to work with the people that you disagree with, even if you disagree vehemently on some things. You have to be willing to talk openly, honestly, and transparently about absolutely everything, and not sugarcoat things. We don't need to beat around the bush. We need to just get to the heart of the issue and discuss the facts of the matter and what the issue is. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Lynn, we have time for one more question.
What boards, commissions, or community organizations in the county have you served on or belonged to prior to filing for county council?
Sean?
As I said, I've been on planning and zoning for the last year. P&Z is a tremendously interesting board. And it's a very focused board, right? So I don't imagine that too many people here watch our meetings, although you can occasionally read about them in the papers when things get hot enough. But P&Z is a board that actually has a quasi-judicial authority. So it is the final or one of the final review boards for going forward with major construction projects and changes to the parcel map, lot line changes. So, we see cases that are highly structured where there's an applicant who wants to do something and there are strict criteria along which their plan is evaluated. And then, we're tasked with reaching a decision on whether to allow them to go forward with that project on the basis of county code. So yeah, that's my sort of boards and commissions involvement so far. And I guess if you're as much of a nerd as I am, I'd certainly recommend applying when vacancies come back up.
Thank you. James?
Yes, I've served a 4-year stint on the Los Alamos County Council. And that was actually by design. I wanted to do 4 years and self-term limit. A funny thing starts to happen to people after they get elected. And we see this from time to time with counselors. People come in with ideas about openness, transparency, the public's the most important. And suddenly they start to withdraw a little bit and get a little more closed in, and then decisions start to get made in the dark and that kind of thing. And so one of the things I found it especially helpful is to have a bunch of folks actually on the outside who pay attention to what you do, who might have a mild disinterest in actually what's going on, who can kind of slap you upside the head when you start to stray into the territory of becoming a Stepford counselor. So thank you.
Rodney?
Yes. At this time, I haven't had the pleasure of serving on any of the boards. However, I am an active member of the Los Alamos Public Safety Association. Here again, where all the public safety functional areas serving the county meet, used to meet monthly to discuss some of the things going on within the county and how they impact the public safety of the county. Thank you.
Thanks. David?
Yes, I did a term on the Parks and Rec Board about 15 years ago, and then I did also a couple of terms on the Canyon Vista Pool Board down here in White Rock, and one term as president of Canyon Vista Pool. And I would say that, it's been a pleasure to serve the community. I found that the Parks and Rec Board was just a bit powerless, and that most of the things that were done by the county staff. And there was a few discussions that we had a role in, but mostly it was about allocating field time and things of that nature. But I enjoyed serving on that in the past, and I found that, the private clubs are simpler and easy to do, and we should always keep that kind of stuff alive and let private initiative go in the county. That's a very important part of this community, and we shouldn't take it as something we're trying to get rid of. Thank you.
Thanks. Denise?
So I have been a member of the Community Development Advisory Board since its inception in 2018. As Aaron indicated, it has been a contentious board. The members of the board have strong but differing opinions, and it hasn't always been easy to reach consensus. But there is always the vote that settles the issue in the long run. When my children were younger, I was involved as a team parent in many of their activities, in track and cross country and soccer. And when they were really young, I volunteered in the classroom. And to this day, I still remember that the first graders were very impressed that I could check their math work without looking at the answer book. One of the fun issues of volunteering with children. So that's what I can recall right now. That's what I've done since I've lived here in the community.
Thanks. Aaron?
So like Denise, I've served on the Community Development Advisory Board since its inception in 2018. For a little over the past year, I've been the board's chair. I was recently elected to a second term as chair of the board. And in that time, there has been very little commonality in the board and consensus. Fortunately, recently we've started moving towards more of a consensus with a couple of recommendations we recently got passed, which is fantastic. And I am very happy to be supporting the community and helping the community in a topic that is, while boring at times, is very contentious and can be very beneficial to the people of the community. Right now, not only am I chair of the Community Development Advisory Board, I work full-time. I go to college full-time. I have 2 little boys with a 3rd one on the way. So my plate's pretty full, and I really look forward to being able to serve this community in a very good manner, because if I can handle all of this stuff at once, including running a campaign, the amount of time and dedication that I'll be able to put into being a county councilor will be pretty significant. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. So it's time now for the closing statements. And as I said, we'll go in reverse ballot order. So we'll begin with David.
Well, I just want to say that in terms of the county council, there have been a couple of issues that I will definitely be looking at revisiting. And that I think that in some ways, if you just look around the county, look at all the closed up buildings, that maybe the county's going the wrong direction. And that the inability of businesses to get open and the number of closed up businesses is a big concern. And it's not just recovery from COVID, but it will happen after that. A lot of it has been the downward trend in the treatment of businesses by the county. So I think that I will oppose the county on that. And we have to reform the county council to improve the treatment of FSN and to also to look at recovery from all of the dead businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Rodney.
Yes, I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone, specifically my supporters, for their support. I look forward to the opportunity of serving as county council. I'm looking forward to being part of the solution and not part of the problem. This is one of those things that just allows me to give back to my community. And Los Alamos County is one of those communities that I'm proud to be a member of. And I look forward to serving. Thank you very much.
Thanks. James?
Yeah, I want to say once again, thanks to the league for hosting the event. These forums tend to focus on issues alone, so I want to take the last minute to focus on a few of my core principles. I believe local government exists to serve the citizens of the community. I believe that local government should be transparent and accountable. Citizens always have the right to know, except for those rare exceptions outlined by the law. And citizens shouldn't need to employ extraordinary methods to access public information. I believe that even the reasonable perception of a conflict of interest is good enough reason for an elected official to abstain from voting. Ethics and integrity rise above party loyalty, personal gain, and yes, sometimes even friendship. The buck stops with elected officials because they, not the county staff, are the ones who set policy for the community. If you want to know more about me, please visit www.voteforrickman.com. Thank you for your attention this evening. 92, 100 people here. That was fantastic. Please go vote.
Thanks. Sean?
Yeah, thanks. You know, I was struck by something that James said earlier, which is that this Stepford counselor problem. You know, that is a serious issue and a serious concern. You know, I do think that my involvement with the business community will substantially defray the extent to which I just can become disconnected from the community. So, you know, I do look forward to, you know, continued engagement with the community. And I guess as a side note, I do have to, you know, commend Antonio Majori for working at Bathtub Row in order to be accessible. I think that's fantastic. I don't think that I'm going to be tending bar, but I do certainly intend to stay involved. And I certainly hope that you'll vote for me when your mail-in ballot arrives. And finally, once again, thanks to the league. This has been a fantastic event, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Denise? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. It's Aaron's turn next.
Thank you. I want to thank the league for having this forum. It's fantastic to be able to sit in front of this many people and be able to get our message out and get out what we want to say to the people and let them know how we're going to represent them if and when we are elected. So I'm running as an independent. That means I've been fighting an uphill battle my entire campaign. We need new perspectives on county council. Transparency, honesty, and integrity are core values that need to be present on county council. I've shown throughout my campaign that I care about Los Alamos County. I've purchased as much of my campaign material from local businesses as possible. I've spent over 85 to 90% of my campaign donations locally. I've remained consistently present in the local community discussing topics such as mental health, uncorked, DP Road, small businesses, and many others. While some other candidates have put their party affiliation on display and tried to let that lead them to victory, I have been active in having discussions, putting myself out there and showing that I truly care about this community. We need leadership that is willing to put in the effort. We need to change the status quo of the county council, and I'm the best person to lead that effort. I humbly ask you to cast your vote for Aaron Walker, independent. Thank you.
Thanks. Denise.
Okay, so Los Alamos County has been my home for many years. I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I've lived in 10 states. But together with my husband, I chose to live here in White Rock, to raise our 3 sons here, and to stay here in retirement. Now I hope to help the county plan for growth and embrace the future while preserving the past and the amenities that make Los Alamos a great place to live. 3 key issues face the county: housing development, commercial sustainability, and community services. I welcome input from county residents on how we can best address these and other issues. My name is Denise Durkis. I look forward to serving on the county council and to representing the people of Los Alamos. I humbly ask for your vote in the upcoming election. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for participating in the forum tonight. I hope that it's helped the voters make their decisions. So this forum has been recorded and we will post it on YouTube, hopefully tomorrow midday. We'll send the link to the candidates and to the press. There will be a link on our website at lwvlosalamos.org. Early voting begins tomorrow in council chambers at 8 a.m. at the municipal building. Online registration closes tomorrow, although you'll be able to vote in person at the county clerk's office and to register and then vote. The county clerk will begin to mail ballots tomorrow to those who applied for them. The LWVLA, Los Alamos League of Women Voters, voter guide was delivered to households and offices on October 1st in the Los Alamos Daily Post. If you threw it away without opening it, I recommend that you retrieve it as soon as possible. If you did not receive it, the voter guide will be available at the municipal building and possibly also at the library on the table where they put books people ordered. You can find all the information at Vote 411, as you see on the screen now, or on our website at lwvlosalamos.org. Thank you all very much for participating in our forum tonight. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Good night.